I've had the new BMW R1300 GS for 4 months now, and I've learnt a lot in that time. What are the things you need to know about the bike before you buy one? Hey kids, it's Mr. Fly here, hope you're well. Now, it's been 4 months since I've had the big brand new BMW R1300 GS in my possession, and in that time I've done all sorts of things on it. I've used it as my daily rider to go to the shops, I've done trips and tours on it, I've had the missus on the back, made loads of videos here on the YouTube channel, all sorts of stuff. Okay, so what have I learned in that time? Well, in short, a lot. And these are the sorts of things that you wouldn't necessarily pick up if you just took the bike out for a 1 hour test ride. They're the sorts of things that only become apparent when you live with the bike for a prolonged period of time. So in this video, I'm going to take you through all the lessons I've learned over the prolonged period of time in which I've had this bike, all the pros and cons, some of which you may have heard before in other reviews, but I think there's going to be a lot here that will be new to you. And after that, I'm going to take a look at some specific comments that you've left for me on previous videos, so stay tuned for that.
So without further ado, let's get on with it.
So, in true style, we're going to start with the negative points first, but just before I get into that, can I just say, when I go through these points, they're all kind of niggles that I've looked out for. Please do bear in mind, I don't hate the bike. This is a bike that is absolutely fantastic to ride. On paper, it's amazing. In fact, I think it's fair to say this is probably one of the best bikes you can buy today. So, as I'm going through this list of negatives, bear in mind, I will get to the positives. Then we'll do a bit of a sum up of the stuff that you've asked me about, and at the very end of the video, we'll do one of my infamous fashion segments. All right, let's crack on, shall we? Right, let's get on with the not so good things about the bike then. I've written everything down as you'd expect to make sure that I don't forget everything that I've learned over the period that I've had the bike. So first thing is, again, minor point, but here we go. It goes over a long way on the side stand. Now this particular bike that I've got doesn't have the adaptive ride height feature. So I suspect what BMW have had to do is make a side stand that fits all versions of the bike. Because if you get one with adaptive ride height, which actually it makes the bike a lot easier to live with anyway, you find that it doesn't lean over so far because the bike is actually lower when it's in its resting position. I have made a video about the adaptive ride height. I'll put a link in the corner to that one, and you'll see on that bike that I ride with that feature, it doesn't go over so far. So if you get a bike without the auto lowering, be warned, it goes over a long way on the side stand, takes a bit of hauling to lift it up again once you're done. So that's the first thing. Next up, cubby hole on the fuel tank there is a great idea, but it doesn't lock. And neither does it take my phone either. I've got an iPhone 13 Max Pro, and it doesn't actually quite fit in there. But that's by the by. What the thing I found that is annoying with that particular cubby hole is that if you say stop at a coffee shop or something, and you lock the steering as you would do, and then you get off the bike and you think, right, I just need my my credit card or wallet. You go to get it out the cubby hole, and of course the handlebars have gone across the cubby hole, and you can't open it to get out, so you have to unlock the bike to do that. So again, minor little niggle. So in some ways it's good because you can't lock that cubby hole, but of course if you put the handlebars across it, you can't open it. But do bear in mind, if you're doing something where you need to get something out of the cubby hole, you have to get it out before you sort of turn the bike off and lock the handlebars up. So again, minor point, but it's just something that irritated me a couple of times when it occurred to me. Next up, and this is a biggie for me, I found this bike pretty flipping heavy, which surprised me because when the bike came out, BMW made great play, rightly, that the bike is lighter than previous generations. But I think they were referring to the R1250 GS there rather than the 1200 that I've got, because this actually comes in on their figures as slightly heavier than the R1200 GS that I've got. The other thing is they're being a little bit disingenuous because that's the very lightest basic bike, so it doesn't have things like the centre stand installed and stuff like that. So once you get the centre stand and baggage and stuff on it, I just find this really hard to haul up. I've got slightly dodgy shoulders, hard to haul up off the side stand, difficult to move around the garage, that sort of thing. So if, like me, you're not a particularly massive bloke, or woman for that matter, and it's not getting into trouble on that one, and you're a bit of a wimp, and moving things around easily is important to you, and it's very important to me, then this bike is surprisingly difficult to shift around. I would say it's got an excellent turning circle, that makes it easier, but moving it in and out of the garage and stuff, which I have to do often, I found pretty difficult on this bike. Right, next on the not so good list is something that rather surprised me, and it's, well, don't just take my word for it, take my wife's word for it, because she's the pillion on the bike when I go riding, and she said she didn't find the back of this bike quite as comfortable as she has the R1200 and the R1250 in the past. She had a bit of a problem with the angle that her arms went at with the hand grips on this, plus you're quite high up, and when you go on motorways and things like that, which we have done since I made the video I'll put in the corner of her talking about being a pillion, she found the wind blast quite strong as well on faster roads. So a bit of a thumbs down for the pillion comfort compared to the old bike. Now if you've never been on a GS before on the back, you might find it's absolutely fine. So that's just somebody that's used to being on the older bikes may find this slightly less comfortable than the outgoing machines. Next up, something that's not maybe so good on the bike, and this is something that plenty of people commented in my videos previously, and I know this is something that other people have said, is that these integrated lights don't necessarily work that well in terms of them being easy to understand. So here I've got the integrated tail flashes, the hazard lights going on, as well as the rear lights. Now, I think the rear lights rather merge into the indicators a bit and make them quite difficult to see. Now, if you brake, that makes these even brighter. It means you're even less likely to see the indicators. So imagine you're coming up to a junction, you're braking hard and you're indicating, quite hard to see the indicators in there. So yeah, a bit of a thumbs down for the way they've done this whole integrated lighting package, as well as this big old ugly radar cover. Whilst I mentioned the big ugly radar cover at the back end, it's probably an opportune moment to mention the one at the front end as well. Now, looks are very much subjective, of course, on any bikes. And in the past, when I first saw this bike, I thought it was the headlight that I didn't like the look of. I've decided that actually I don't mind the headlight. I think it's probably all right. But what makes the front end look wrong for me is this blanking plate on the radar cover. And I think it may be just because it's above the light. I think if the radar was below the light and the light was above, the whole thing might look a little bit better. But obviously, entirely a subjective thing. For me, it's very important. I buy a bike probably 70% on what the thing looks like, and for this, even though I've had it for a while and it's getting less offensive to me, I just don't love the looks of this bike. It's not a bike that I turn around as I leave the garage and look at it and think, yeah, that's a great bike, that is. So for me, this radar cover absolutely ruins the looks of the front end of the bike. Next up, exhaust pipe rust. Not a big deal. Loads of bikes have this issue. It's probably maybe it could even be cleaned off, but for me, having this big old rusty exhaust pipe just kind of spoils the look of the back end of the bike. Right, next up, the thing I'm not keen on this bike is this kind of switchgear complexity, and well, not maybe the switchgear complexity as much, but actually the functionality complexity. By what I mean, all this stuff here. So if I want to change the windscreen height or put the heated seats on or whatever, I have to hit the little button over here. I then get into this menu and you have to cycle through them somehow. Yeah, I'm using this one, or using that one, and then it's a right old faff to get to things that you might want to do on quite a regular basis. Now, I know that you can assign functions to this button here, and that is indeed what I've done. If I go back to the main screen, look, if I hit this little button here, I hope you can see this. There you go. Oh, actually not possible. Why is that? It's probably because the bike's not on. But you can assign, I've got assigned the heated grips and the heated seat to this, and there's a way of also assigning a third function as well, which I haven't quite got to. But my point is, all that is very complicated to set up, especially when you haven't got a manual, and it's a right faff just to get to something that on my 1200 I just hit heated grips on and we were good to go. So that's something that for me is a bit of a major downer on this bike. It's got so many great features on it. Necessarily BMW have had to do it because they've got to put the controls from somewhere, but there's so many features, it's hard to use them. Right, what you're looking at here is the gear change lever, and the reason why I point at this with my pointy stick is because I still find the gear change on the GS a little bit clunky. Now, I would say it's probably the best gear change I've ever used on any GS, but compared to other bikes, the quick shifter and the gearbox on this is pretty, well, not as smooth as I'd like. Right, having just touched on the complexity of controlling the switchgear and the functions on this bike, let's just talk about the switchgear itself. It's the usual BMW stuff, but the problem is, not a big problem, but again, some that many people have mentioned, it doesn't have backlighting on it. Now, on a bike as sophisticated as this and as expensive as this, and one with so many buttons, you'd like to think it would have backlighting so that when you're riding at night, you can see where you're putting your finger. Probably not a big deal if you just ride this bike, you get it into muscle memory, but if you ride lots of bikes like me, it becomes difficult. And if KTM and Triumph and others can backlight the switches, why can't BMW? I just wanted to briefly touch on price of the big Beamer. It's, you know, all bikes are expensive, aren't they? But I think BMW says that, you know, the basic bike comes in at something like 15 grand, or I didn't look this up what the basic price is, but it seems quite a reasonable price. But once you spec them up, they start to get very expensive, and indeed, a bike of this sort of spec is nearer 24 grand. But it's just little things like this. So I did make a note of something. So for example, lots of the things that you'd think are key options that BMW raved about at the launch, things like the radar cruise control, the adaptive ride height, that sort of thing. Actually, you don't get with that basic bike. You have to pay extra for those. So, for example, the radar comes in the innovation package, and that's an extra £1,115. Quite a lot of money, although it's a brilliant feature, I have to say. The centre stand is a £155 option on the TE. The heated seat, 150 quid. The electric windscreen, 280 quid. The auto ride height adjust, which is well worth having, by the way, is 490 quid. The Acura exhaust is an incredible 925 quid. The connected ride sat-nav, 660 quid. The luggage, well over 1,500 quid. So yeah, it's an expensive bike. Once you start adding it up and going in the configurator and actually specing a bike you'd like, it quickly gets ranked right up well over 20 grand. Now, the slight niggle that this splendid looking fuel tank actually lost a litre of capacity. Not a big deal. The bike is slightly more economic than the outgoing machine, so you end up with a similar range. But yeah, 1 litre less capacity in the fuel tank. Right, another little whinge from me is that this bike is pretty difficult to keep clean. It's got a slightly differently designed hugger on here. It's got a little lip in the top that I assume is designed to mean that less stuff gets flung up on the bike, but sadly doesn't seem to work. I'm a bit of an anorak about when it comes to keeping bikes clean, so I try and keep them clean. But this one, actually, it's not looking too bad at the moment, but the wheels are absolutely disgusting, and I have cleaned it quite regularly. So yeah, you've got to like cleaning if you're going to have the new GS. The good news is, it is actually slightly easier to clean itself than the outgoing bike. There's less scaffolding and stuff, so cleaning won't take you as long, but it does throw a lot of crud all over itself. I think I mentioned earlier that I didn't have a manual for the bike, and that's slightly untrue. You can actually download it electronically, and that in itself is a bit of a nuisance because I just like to have a proper book in my hand. I'm old school like that. But I did download it to my phone. The problem is it's not actually written that well, and it's quite hard to understand. So when I have tried to figure out some of the complexities of that control system, for example, it's not that easy even when you've got the manual. So just beware, the manual is a bit, well, not as good as you'd hope. Something that personally I don't like so much on this bike compared to the outgoing bikes are the fact that the seating position on here, you actually sit very much on the bike rather than in it. Now it might just be that it's a very different seating position to the outgoing GS, which I'm very used to, of course, but I personally like the sort of cosseting feeling of being sat in the bike. It's like putting on an old pair of slippers. This one, you're very much on it, and that to me isn't quite as nice. Whilst on the subject of ergonomics of the bike, I find this bike is still quite tall. Now at the moment I've got my feet pretty much flat on the deck, as you can see, so that's absolutely fine. But that's because I've got the low seat fitted, which is you know, another option where you can probably have that instead of the standard seat. I don't know. The problem with the low seat is it's not quite as comfortable as the standard seat, so I miss out a bit on comfort for the price of getting my feet down. But I'd rather do that because I feel much more confident when my feet are flat on the deck. But yeah, I think if I was to buy one of these, the auto lowering option would be an absolute must. Next up on the not so good list are the baggage on it, or the bags, the panniers and the top box. I don't mind the top box, it's not too bad, although it seems relatively small capacity, although I quite like the way it opens. Although I understand that there may have already been a recall on these because of some fault. I'm not too sure on the details of that. But the side panniers, I do find they are really fiddly to put on and off. The central locking is a bit of a pain across the whole things. They're not that capacious. It's a bit fiddly to do the extendy thing with a little wind thing. I'm not a big fan of the panniers. I did a whole video on that. If I've got room in the links that I can put on the video, I'll put a link to my little review of the luggage on it. But yeah, thumbs down for these. They're just a bit too faffy for my liking. One of the things I loved about the outgoing GS was its kind of road presence and its sort of, for want of a better word, masculine stance. I think this new bike has kind of lost some of that. It's something about that front end. I know I've already gone on about it, but I just think that sort of big Tonka toyness, that's part of the appeal of the GS to me, and this bike just doesn't have that. Just a note on this particular bike I've got, this is the Tramontana variant, which, in case you're wondering, is a mountain range in Mallorca. I was actually there at the weekend. Anyway, that's another story. Yeah, although I quite actually like this gold-wheeled green and gold tank type setup, I know lots of people don't, but I actually quite like that. The thing I don't like about this is some of the bling on it. So here we go, look at this. This is the Option 719 machining here that you get. I just think that's a bit fussy and over the top. I think things like the gold handlebars maybe aren't necessary. It's got special brake levers, I think, as well, which is a bit, I don't know if they're really necessary. The Option 719 brake reservoirs, not sure about that. So basically, again, it's very much a personal thing, but you pay quite a bit extra for this variant, and I think probably it's not worth it unless you're completely in love with the gold and green paint scheme. Right, last bit of whinging for now, and that is the way that when you're looking through the windscreen, you can see these black plastic struts. Now, it's not great here in the garage to actually see what I mean, but these bits here, if you've got like a light road ahead of you, become quite distracting. So yeah, I'm not too keen on the view of the road ahead. All right, enough with the whinging. Let's get on to the stuff that I really like about the bike. Right, first up on the pros list, I've said here, feeling of lightness on the move. The thing is super agile compared to GSs that came before. Agility and handling is superb, and that absolutely is the case. If you never had to look at the bike, but you just had to ride it, you'd think, what am I whinging about? Because this bike is absolutely amazing to ride. It's so quick compared to bikes that have come before. It's much more, it's not sports bike handling, but it's, you know, it's moved more towards, well, I suppose like the old BMW XR was, and bikes like the Multistrada, things like that, or maybe more even KTM territory. So that's kind of the way the bike's moving, and yeah, the way it handles and goes and stops indeed is excellent. So certainly that's a major plus of the bike. Next up, I've said here, and it's related, is the power of the bike. This bike now puts out more horsepower out of this new engine. The thing absolutely flies now. I'm not entirely sure that's the most important thing that people want of a GS, but yeah, this bike is fast. One of the features I love is the blind spot detection. You see this little triangle that just flashed in the mirrors there. If something comes up alongside you when you're on a roundabout or whatever on a motorway, those flash like you get in blind spot detectors on cars. Absolutely brilliant feature. I love that. Comes as part of the radar setup. Haven't talked about the ride much on here, but I would say the suspension on this bike is absolutely superb. You get such a smooth ride on here. It's eminently adjustable as well, but the ride quality, I'm not going to say magic carpet. Oops, I've said magic carpet. Next, this windscreen. It's the standard windscreen on here. It's surprisingly good. On all other GSs I've ridden, I've had load of buffeting and so on, but in its upper position, no need for little flip up things at the top or anything like that. This is really good at keeping you protected from the weather. At least if you're a shorty like me, I'm 5'8", by the way. Now, I've whinged a lot, goodness knows I've whinged a lot about the looks of the front end of this bike, and in particular, if that's caused by the radar. But I have to say, the features that radar gives you are really absolutely superb. So we've already mentioned the blind spot detection thing. The other thing that it gives you is the radar adaptive cruise control. It's one of those things you don't necessarily know that you need it until you've tried it. And me with my dicky shoulder, if I'm on a long motorway run, I want to get my hand off the handlebars as much as I can. I know it's dangerous and I get all sorts of comments about waving my arms about and take my hands off the handlebars. But believe me, if you need to rest your arm for some reason, sticking the radar cruise control on, following the speed of the car in front, it works absolutely flawlessly. When I went to Wales, I think I probably had the radar cruise control on 80% of the time, and it never got it wrong. I mean, there are use cases where it goes slightly awry, for example, if you're crossing lanes in front of a slower car. But generally speaking, you get to know how and when it works, and it's absolutely brilliant. The radar features on here, well, that makes the bike look a bit naff. They work superbly. Right, this thing at the top here is called the BMW Connected Ride Navigator, and it costs you extra money. It's like 600 odd quid, and then I think you have to pay extra for the bracket as well. But I have to say that is so much better than I thought it was going to be. If you're used to the old Nav 5 or Nav 6 on your old bikes, it's definitely worth taking a look at that. I made a video specifically on that. I think I'm running out of capacity to put links in the corner, but check my back catalogue if there's not a link in the corner. I did do a review of that connected ride device before. That has surprised me. That has been really good on the bike. This bike has phenomenal brakes all round, and not only do they stop the bike really well, but if you yank them on hard, you get flashing lights on the back. I love all that sort of thing. Another difference between the new bike and the outgoing machines are the finishes on the bike, in particular on the engine. I love what they've done here with this stuff. It's like almost like a crackle finish. It seems really hard wearing. I know on the older bikes they had some issues with bits of corrosion and things like that, but yeah, all the engine finishing I think is going to be much better on this bike, much more hard wearing, so thumbs up for that. Really, this next plus point is one for a demo, which you can't do in the garage for obvious reasons, but I would say the turning circle on this is absolutely fantastic. It's like London taxi-esque. These handlebars go a long way either way, and you know, lots of travel, and you can turn this thing on a sixpence. The turning circle, brilliant on the new GS. All right, so those are the main things that I love about the new bike. Let's move on to some of the questions you specifically asked me for in the comments over the preceding videos. Let's go through those now. Right, as you'd expect, I've made a list of these. So the first one from somebody, sorry, I didn't make a note of your name, says, how easy is it to get onto the centre stand? Well, I would say, I think it's a little bit easier to get onto the centre stand than the other bikes were, but it is an option on this bike. I'll give it a go. I would say I'm likely to make it look bad because I'm just awaiting another operation on my right shoulder, which is currently frozen. So it's very difficult for me to move any bikes at the moment, but let me try it anyway. If I can do it with a frozen shoulder, anyone can do it. Right, just come around this side. It's got a funny little leg, take my word for that on it. It sort of flicks out to help you with a bit of purchase, and then onto the centre. Now bearing in mind I have got the panniers on here at the moment. Bingo. Now it may look like I was making a meal of that, but for me to do that with my shoulder in its current state is pretty good, so easy to get it onto the centre stand. All right, next up. Right, lots of people have asked about the adaptive ride height version of the bike. David Brand said, pity you don't have the adaptive height controls. I'd like to know how reliable it is. Well, luckily, as I said earlier, David, I have made a video on that, so if you've not seen that already, go and check that out. Don't know how reliable it's going to be. Only time will tell, but certainly it's a brilliant feature. Right, next up, John Albone says, even though your bike doesn't have auto ride height adjust, does it still have the centre stand assist? When you've got that auto ride height, when you put the centre stand down, it just winds the preload off to help you get it onto the centre stand. The answer to that, as you probably just saw, John, is no, it doesn't have that. Several of you mentioned that you thought the panniers should have gold trim rather than this aluminium. Just mentioned that in passing. I'm not sure if I agree with that or not. I don't, even though I've criticised the panniers and the top box, I don't think they look too bad. It's just the functionality that I find a bit tricky, and the central locking is dire. Anyway, let's move on to the other comments. Apparently, according to Eli the Great, there's a new oil change procedure and filter. Apparently there's no more spin on. If so, can you perhaps cover simple maintenance like that? Well, you're asking the wrong person there, Eli. I don't do simple maintenance, or indeed I just get a man to do it, but apparently slightly different to service than before. Have a look at the rear mudguard thing over the tyre, Andy. This is David Clay. Thanks for your comment, David. It's got a lip under the top. Be interested to see if this stops the crud and water from being thrown forwards. Well, as you saw earlier, it doesn't, unfortunately. They have slightly redesigned it, but doesn't seem to make a meaningful difference. Next up, this is from Concierge Med. Can you do us a favour? Can you measure the width of the back end with both panniers fitted, please? Hang on, I'll find a tape measure. Right, well, this is public service broadcasting at its best. Found myself a tape measure. I'll do my best here, Concierge Med. Let me see if I can feed it through somehow and get the most accurate measurement I can. So here we go. This is with the panniers actually folded out. Yeah, they're both... Actually, no, they're on their innermost setting, I lie. It looks like 90 centimetres with a little bit. So if you work on the basis of 90 centimetres for the panniers when they're not extended, and then I'd say 110 maximum, then you're not going to be far off, because that would be 110. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some sort of idea of how big the panniers are. Alrighty, next up, this one comes from Alan Edwards. Thank you, Alan, for your comment. He asks, one thing that nearly put me off ordering one was the whining noise it makes when shutting off the throttle. Quite annoying. See what you think. Well, I have to say, Alan, I haven't noticed that at all. Now, as well as a dodgy shoulder, my hearing's not great, but I haven't really heard any sort of whining noise. But you're not the only person that's mentioned it, so maybe it varies depending on the particular bike. But this particular machine, which has done a couple of thousand miles now, doesn't have a whining noise. It's certainly not enough to put me off buying it. It does sound a little bit different to other GSs, but not really noticed an outstanding whining noise. So thank you for that one anyway, Alan. What else have we got here? This is from Rick. Indicator size brake lights seem like a huge compromise on safety. How effective is it to see the lights from behind? Well, we've already covered that one. Hopefully you saw that, Rick. Like the little storage tank on the... sorry, the little storage bit on the tank, but is it lockable? That's from Prep for Evac. Covered that off. It's not lockable, unfortunately. It is, you know, entirely open to the elements. So when the handlebars aren't over it, but if you do put the handlebars over and lock them, then it's sort of locked. Although you can sort of get your finger in there if you've got really small fingers. So there we go, that's that one. Next up, I'll be most concerned with the seat comfort and suspension differences in terms of comfort between the 1200 and 1250 and the new 1300. That's from Rob. Well, again, I've covered that off, Rob, many times. The seat isn't as comfortable on this as the outgoing bike. It's not uncomfortable by any means. If you've not been on a GS before, you'd probably think this is an absolutely lovely seat. And it is. It's a good seat, but it ain't quite as comfortable, in my view, and in my missus' view, as the outgoing machine. It might be because I've got the low seat on here, which definitely loses a bit of the comfort, as I said before. And then the last one here, the last one here is from DC Cather. It says, is the option 719 bling worth a substantial cost? Can you have the green and gold wheels without the 719? I sometimes ride at night. Is the switch? Well, there's loads of questions here. I think I'll answer most of them actually. But yeah, no, I'm not keen on the bling, as I said. Entirely a matter of personal taste. But your specific question: can you have the gold wheels and the green and gold without the option 719? The answer, I'm afraid, is no. This is the option 719 Tramontana bike. Okay, so there we are. You have to kind of decide when you think about all the negative points, whether they add up to something significant to you. Mostly they're minor things, but do they all together make something significant? For me, the biggest negative parts of the bike are the way it looks. I'm still getting used to it. It's not repulsive, but I really don't like the way this radar looks. I'm not a big fan of the panniers and stuff, and the luggage on the back. I made a separate video about that. I'll put a link in the corner. And also just the ease of living with it, I still find a little bit difficult.
What I really love on this bike are the engine and the radar cruise control. They are both absolutely brilliant. This engine is so perky, so sporty. It's fabulous. It's unlike any other I've noticed on a GS before. And then that radar cruise control, whether you're on a motorway cruising along on tour, or whether you're in a restricted speed limit area trying to not break the limit, just so handy. One of those things that until you've had it, you didn't realise was an essential bit of riding kit.
So the question is, will the highly anticipated R1300 GS version of this bike, the adventure version that we're expecting to see by the end of the year, is that going to address some of the main concerns that I have with the bike, in particular the looks? Well, rumour has it that it may do, so we're just going to have to wait and see. Alright, so that's almost it for this video, but do stick around and stay tuned to the very end of the video after the credits if you're interested in the kit that I've been wearing during this bit of filming. But otherwise, that's it for this time. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Do let me know your thoughts in the comments below as usual. Hit subscribe, all that sort of thing, if you've not done so already. I look forward to speaking to you next time. Until then, this has been the Mr. Flyer. Cheerio.
Hey kids, we're the Mr. Flyers.
Aha, so thank you for sticking around, and to the now infamous fashion segment, which actually I haven't done for a while, but with the new biking season upon us, I've got some new kit. The eagle-eyed ones amongst you may have spotted I'm wearing some kit they've not seen before on this video, so let me take you through everything I was wearing from head to toe. So to start with, something actually of course you won't have seen on the video because I was wearing, is this, my trusty Schubert C5 helmet. I've been wearing these for about 2 years now. I've got two of these, a white one and this one, which I wanted to show you because it's quite nice in this particular colour scheme. It is called Master Yellow, and it comes in at around about £589.99. I just love these helmets. They're quiet, they're lightweight. It is flip front, even though it looks like it's not, if I can do it one-handed. There we go, she flips up. It's got all the current approvals, which at the moment is the one that you've got to have is ECE 22.06, and that is approved. And yeah, I'll stick a link below to that. A lovely helmet. Next up in my ensemble is this, my trusty TMF neck buff. You can get these for £8 at my website, which is www.themissendonflyer.com. I'll stick a link below to that as well. All right, next up, the big thing that you've not seen before, and you may have noticed, is this. Oh, there goes the bells. It's my new jacket. This is called this. Let's do that again. Okay, next up, the more major thing you may have spotted is this brand new jacket. It's from Segura. It's called the Scorpio. Comes in at around about £240. It's waterproof. It's one of the ones with a removable liner, which I've taken out at the moment. It's quite a warmish day. It's got a neoprene collar on it. It's got CE level 1 armour, and it's CE A rated, so it's sort of an urban level jacket. Right, let me give you a bit of a twirl in the jacket. There we go. Right, underneath that, I've got on this little puppy. It's kind of a, well, you can use it as a mid-layer, which is what I've been doing today, or you can just use it around about the garage as well. I think it's just a smart looking thing. It's from Rucker. It's called the Lati. I think it comes in at around about, let me check the price for you. Comes in at £109.99. There is a ladies version available as well. I just think it looks really smart, and it's something that you can wear, as I say, around about the garage as well as on the bike, so it's multi-purpose. And underneath that, I've got a Rucker, don't want to move the mic too much, a Rucker base layer as well. Comes in part of a two-part set. It's about £45. One of those clever technical fabrics, keeps you warm in winter and cool in summer as well. Again, link below. Gloves today have been these. These are brand new from Halversons. They're made from goat's leather, and they're called the Flon glove, F-L-O-N. Come in, I think, at around about £99. They're really a summer glove, but they've got a little bit on the finger so that you can use your sat-nav or whatever, and they're really, really comfortable as well. And they've got this knuckle protection on here as well with all the right ratings. And then other stuff is very much stuff that you've seen before, my old favourite. So these aren't new, but I've been wearing these for at least a year now. These are my PMJ De jeans, D-E-U-X as in the number 2 in French. They are AAA rated single layer, absolutely brilliant, find them really comfortable. I'll wear them as day-to-day jeans as well as on the bike. And last but not least, these boots. These are from Falco. They're called the Gordon 2s. I've been wearing these for absolutely ages as well. And again, I use them as day-to-day boots as well as on the bikes. Once again, link below. Just a heads up, all the links that I've given you today are what are called affiliate links. They're to a company called Sports Bike Shop that I have actually no affiliation with other than these affiliate links. If you click on them and subsequently buy something, then it's at no extra cost to you, but I'll get a little bit of a kickback, so you'll be helping out the channel. And I have to think their service and prices are excellent. But if you do want to go and try stuff on first and find out where your local dealer is, then check out www.bikerheads.co.uk. I'll put a link to that below as well, and you can go and try the stuff on. And you can also pick up the latest 2024 catalogue, which has all the stuff in here that I've been wearing, and basically everything that you see me wearing on the channel. It's all in the new catalogue, which you can get at your dealers, or you can download it from the website.